Let's take a look at the Windows application. If you just open up the project, it's in Windows with Controls. It's just called Windows Application 2. No big deal, just the default name. And we'll go over how Visual Studio.net works in a little bit. I'm just going to show you how this particular application works. We can view the code by right-clicking on the class, and we'll build it just to take a peek at it. Just a simple thing. A couple of labels here, and a couple of text boxes, 3 text boxes, and a close button. No big deal. I'll show you how that works and what you can expect in Visual Studio. Now, when we come through here, we can see that Visual Studio wants to add a whole bunch of private variables that are going to work with our different controls that we have there, and components if we had components. Controls are, again, the visual things that we place onto our forms. Text box is from system.windows.forms.textbox. But notice that we could just eliminate all the extra nonsense that gets added there. We don't have to be so specific if we don't want to. But we're not really designing for the web, so we don't have to really worry about bandwidth, and our classes are pretty small to begin with, so you don't really have to even bother yourself about it. These are just declaring the variables. You can go through and search and get rid of anything that references that or anything that gets on your nerves, of course. But that's pretty much what it's doing, creating private variables here that is going to work within the object-oriented programming constraints of working with encapsulation. And we have our Form1 class, public. Again, we're just using that components container. That's setting up by default to be used when it's needed, initialize component, etc. In the initialize component area, as you can see when we take a peek down, this is going to be what is really going to be set up for us just as the beginnings. You can see that this .button close is our button for closing. We just named it that. This .text box 1, 2, and 3, and then we have our 3 labels. And we have also the suspend layout command here. It's a method. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we're just going to continue down and see that we have the button.close. We're specifying the location. And here's where we start using system.drawing. We're going to set it to the point, which is the x and y coordinate, 192 by 136. Well, if we came through and we looked at our button and we said, well, let's nudge it. We nudge it to the right. Maybe we just nudge it to the left a little bit. And we'll take a peek. Well, we just changed it. Now it's 208 by 144 something. And if we just do a quick undo, and here is what we're going to get this message coming up saying it wants to change this, but this is going to lose any of the designer changes that you made. Well, we don't care. That's what we want. So before that code was shown, it's going to make those changes back in the designer view. And you can see it was really 192 something, so no big deal. You could also just do that with the form if you wanted to, as we're going to see. But that's what it's going to use, system.drawing.point, to make that point reference. And then you can also give the name, the size, the tab index, which is specifying when you hit that tab key, what's going to be going first and second and third in the tab order as it loops around again. The text for the label text of our button. And then we have a click event here, an event handler. We're using the delegate event handler, and it's doing system.event handler. Again, you don't necessarily need the system dot part, but this is going to take in our method that's going to serve as the event here. It's going to be the event for what we're working on, for that button click. You can see this .button close .click. This is going to be where this event is going to be taking over here. So this is a event that's for this particular button close, and then later we specify outside of all of this text, this region, at the bottom here, we specify all our events. Now they look just like methods. They're events. These are the methods that are going to perform that functionality of what we're going to be doing. And you can see that button close click here doesn't return anything. It's private, and it's going to take in the standard object sender system.event.args-e, and you can work with that if you needed to. But it's just going to close the application, application.exit. You can see the application class videos for more information on that. And you can see you can control the different events here at the bottom of your application. And notice again we have our application run, of course, but these are going to be the different code segments that are going to handle the events and where you're going to place code to actually manipulate those events. So we'll just continue. So we have our text box, our button here, button closed, then our text boxes. Again, location, name, the size. You can see here the width and height. 120 being the width and then the height. In pixels, tab index of 1, we just specify the default text by updating text to give it George and Rogers for the last name. Also note that I didn't actually change the text boxes here because it's easier just to take a peek at what's being said here as far as what it is. But you should go through and change the names actually to make them more readable to what they're going to do, of course. But this is just a basic example. But we did the same thing for 3 as we do for 2. These are the properties that we're going to be setting up along with the events here for those text boxes. Our labels very similar as well. The label text is listed here. Tab index, of course. Everything's listed there. And then we're doing something here at the end, and we'll go over this as well. We're actually changing the auto scale base size, as you can see, and we're establishing a collection of controls for this particular form. And I'll explain that as well.